So, Mr. Chato, want to have a little chat with you today.
Sure.
About
Sounds great,
sounds
script
great
doctor.
to
I
talk
got
about.
this notice that said, "Are you willing to record this?" And I said, "No." So I hope you don't mind. I say, click no because
Well,
I
it's
don't.
we're in a single party consent province, so
So whatever you say goes.
well, I mean, either one of us could be responsible for this.
Oh, there you go.
Um,
Okay.
but speaking of that, I wanted to talk to you about something you're quite an expert in, which is comedy. Not just with sketch and jokes as well, but just the genre in general. You have
I wouldn't use the word expert. I'd say I'm experienced. Just because
okay,
you're an expert doesn't mean you can make good stuff.
that is true. That is very true. So you are an experienced and successful comedian because you
Yeah,
have had a you've had significant success, and
that's fair.
at the time of recording this, you've crossed that 100,000 subscriber milestone on YouTube.
That's right.
So let's use that as the currency.
That's fine.
That's
I'm
fine.
I'm I'm good with that. That's a good reason to talk about me. I'm happy about that.
I'm always excited to talk about you, sir,
Well,
because
we talking about egos. What kind of ego do you have? Does your
uh
girlfriend complain about your ego?
uh that's a good question. I don't know. The things that she does complain about are my inappropriate jokes that I make at the wrong time. So I
Well,
don't know.
there's that. My wife one time fairly recently got mad at a joke I made at her expense, and I said, "Dear, when I stop, I didn't mean that at all. When I stop making jokes, then you should be afraid because we're like concerned because then I'm saying things behind your back. As long as I'm saying everything in front of you, I don't mean it."
Well, that's good. Yeah, I don't have that point. I usually make jokes at inappropriate time in an effort to break any sort of tension around.
Yeah. Or
Like
you're just an asshole guy.
that too. I tend to lead towards the latter because when I first met my girlfriend's father, and he gave me the old "What's your intentions with my girlfriend or with my daughter?" I said, "Well, after this, making out, and then maybe we'll see what happens afterwards." And she got really embarrassed by that.
oh, oh, you went for it. Oh my
Well, yeah, I
gosh.
wasn't gonna lie to him because that was my intentions. I'm like, okay, we'll meet the parents, we'll do the dinner thing,
Yeah,
and then
but yeah,
I'll make a
yeah.
pass at my
You
girlfriend
could
on the way
you could
back.
have made it a little more subtle.
Well, I mean, it's better than what I did to when I was in high school and I had been dating my girlfriend for at the time for 3 years, and I already knew their parents. And then when we were doing like a first unsupervised date, I jokingly wrote two different girls' names on each hand, and I would refer to one and the other to try and remember the name, and neither of them were my girlfriend's name, and it did make the father quite perplexed. But my girlfriend got the joke.
I see. Oh, you did it as a joke.
I did as a joke, as if I'm not going to like I'm so nervous to meet him. I had to write down my girlfriend's name on my hand so I wouldn't forget it, but I write down the wrong name.
That's a double joke.
Yeah.
I think you would have been good with her name, but
Mhm.
then just through performance. Oh no, I really like Viola. She is like the love of my life. When we leave today, me and Viola. See, you could have done it through performance. I think it would have worked.
Oh, I did do the performance part where I did stop and I actually looked directly at my hand.
No, no, that's what you got to do. Yeah, but you had the wrong name.
Yeah, but
Yeah,
I put the wrong name.
I would have argued that. I would have said you need to just go for the performance.
Oh,
Don't you remember my daughter's name? No, I think Viola is a lovely girl. Anyways.
yeah.
Yeah, see here we're arguing and editing stuff already.
But well, that's okay because that's the process of comedy.
Well,
And
yes and no. I
mhm,
mean, one of the things the Frantics learned early on, which was great, is that we were most invested in our ideas at the very beginning. So we learn never to critique the first read through.
mhm.
And then once you read your bit, and we called that tasting. So you taste your sketch in front of other people, and you can very quickly hear whether it's working or not, right?
Yeah,
And,
absolutely. Yeah.
and then the second rewrite, which would be almost purely an expansion right, then when we got together, everyone was way more comfortable critiquing what was in there, because you just got that over the hump. Because I've been in writing sessions where bang, they're jumping on you right from the start. The moment you make your pitch, and you're going, okay, that was pleasant. Good. Okay. Thank
So
you.
they weren't even getting a feel for the joke yet before they started jumping.
Not really.
Okay.
I mean, you can't really get a feel for the joke until you expand every single opportunity around it. That's when you really start getting an idea whether something is going to work or not. So, but
Well,
no, I would say the vast majority of writing arrangements I'd been to outside of the Frantics was just, people arguing constantly.
so more argument than actual writing,
Yes,
which is unfortunate because
because you're writers.
you're writers. That's what you're supposed to do.
You don't go, I'd like to hire an arguer. Are you in? How many years of arguing do you have? I see. Very good. No,
I studied arguing at Harvard University.
Yes, that's right. I've got I've got 3 years. I've got a MBA in arguing. And
I worked for Arguers Anonymous as a volunteer.
That's right. And I'm married. So
and I'm married. So I do that every day.
Every day. So I'm quite qualified to argue. We just wrote a sketch.
We did. And
maybe a bit close to the argument clinic, but I think you can, I think you could make a case for what we just came up with.
Yeah. And it's funny that we can just kind of go back and forth and pitch these types of premises, because one of the things I've noticed, and we kind of went over a handful of comedies that are coming out over the course of this year, and some have some interesting potentials and some have some stuff that, or at least one definitely has a subject matter that's kind of been done to death.
Oh yeah. I know which one you're talking about.
And let's just jump right into it.
Let's do it.
It's Fool's Paradise, the Charlie Day film.
Right.
We saw the trailer. It does have one good opening joke that I thought was quite clever about the medical industry.
Yes, that I thought that the opening joke was the best joke. Well, it's not just the medical industry; it's the way society is treating people with mental illnesses.
Mm-hmm.
So, okay, the solution is just put them on the street. That to me was a total San Francisco gag.
Yeah, the solution is it's society's problem.
Yeah, I dump them on the street, which I thought that was really good social commentary.
Yes,
and you know what? If that was the premise of the movie, that would have been really strong.
I think you have something there, because the premise could be further developed in, well, how many? It's not really so much the person that they're throwing out; it's the people that are doing the throwing.
Yeah, and the system that just. No, at one point they kept you in the institution, they cared for you, and then the money ran out. Why did the money run out? Which politicians made the decision to cut the funding? There's just so many angles to that. And instead, now he's out on the street and he is quote unquote an idiot. And that's what makes him valuable, is because he's a doppelganger. And
another idiot, essentially.
Yeah, they were both idiots. It's true. And I didn't understand. Now, that was one of the things in the trailer I didn't quite understand, is what was the currency that the guy he was substituting for had? Like, mm-hmm. was he famous, and then now he's so out of it he can't make a movie? So I didn't get that part. Or, what was the reason?
Part of me was wondering is if they're suggesting that the guy that is the actor that's not the doppelganger was just difficult to work with. Like, he wouldn't work with producers or directors. He was too much of a diva.
Or he looked disheveled, as if he was like
an alcoholic.
The bad period of Robert Downey Jr., whether they were doing a parody of Robert Downey Jr. during his down period.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and but the other part too is that it feels too much like a tried premise, and it also feels too much like, oh, we have this great opening joke where we make fun of the medical institutions for mentally people with mental
Right.
disorders,
And then to drop it.
and then completely drop it to go to another institution that is full of people with mental disorders, and,
Which is show business.
which is show business.
Wait a second, that's what you're in, and I'm kind of tacitly on the side in. Are you accusing both of us having mental illnesses? Yes. Okay.
Yes,
fine. Okay,
yeah.
let's move forward. Okay.
Completely different parts of the spectrum, but
That's-
yeah, it has to
That's
be.
true. We can move forward. Not that we're in agreement with that. We can move forward.
Yeah, like only someone who wants to go into a business that's 99.9% rejection has some problems.
That's right.
For
That's
sure.
right. Oh, and then talking with other people whose the main currency that they have that you have in common is rejection.
Yeah.
We can both talk about our rejection.
Yeah. I got turned down by that studio twice this week.
Yeah. Oh, well, I've been turned down 3 times. Yeah. So that was weird. You know what? As you know, we've talked about it before. I really hate movies about show business. That's just a personal bugaboo. I mean, Singing in the Rain, notwithstanding, Hollywood is suffuse. Is that a word? With movies that are navel gazing about writers, Barton Fink. I mean, all this stuff. I just have a prejudice against. Bowfinger, I think, was an exception because the performances were so lovely. And this movie reminds me of a bad version of Bowfinger.
Yeah, I got that sense too, because Bowfinger had something authentic about it. It was not about the big studio. It was literally about the indies and like the smaller underdogs within an industry with a lot of underdogs, but also a clear, defined top dog.
Well, it was an accidental indie because Steve Martin played a producer director that actually had some success and was slowly
working his way down. Yeah,
down.
yeah, it's on the decline.
The performance of
Eddie Murphy
was, I mean, heartbreaking. I mean, it was such a fantastic performance, which I'm not getting out of Charlie Day.
No, I mean, he's playing a mime, and that's almost that's like part of the low tiers of comedy anyways.
He's playing a mime in this? Like
he's essentially a mime because he's a mute, or he's someone that doesn't speak. Like that's the gimmick of his character is he doesn't speak.
Okay.
And but he's not deaf, and he's technically not really mute. He has the ability, like physically, he just doesn't speak. Like that's apparently his.
That's his psychosis.
That's his psychosis.
Okay.
And I think what they're trying to lean into is that, because it is called Fool's Paradise, so maybe it's playing off the idea of better to have people assume I'm a fool than to open my mouth and make that assumption confirmed. And I kind of butchered that, but then again, I know
what you mean. You're paraphrasing.
Yes.
Anyways, yeah. So it looked glossy.
It did.
I didn't really give a shit for it.
And I think it's just because it sets you up in one premise and abandons it to go for something else that has been done to death at this point. Like, how many comedies are there that really do make fun of the medical industry?
Oh,
I mean, there's a handful, but in regards to the same level of what makes fun of the entertainment industry, some of your biggest players like Matthew Broderick, Ben Affleck, Alec Baldwin, Christopher Guest and co. They've all made fun of the entertainment industry in films.
Yes, it's true. And One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest was kind of a medical. They made fun of the medical industry.
Definitely institutional. Yeah, the
institutionalizing. Yeah.
But that was, I would say that's as funny moments as it has. I would say that's far more of a drama.
That's a tragedy.
It is a drama, a tragedy.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm trying to think of like.
I forgot Danny DeVito was in that.
Yeah, I know. That's one of his earlier roles.
Yeah, and it's just the guy who went up and touched things and
yeah.
What a good actor. What a cast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can't remember I know the actress who played Nurse Ratched in I just can't remember her name, but she is a delightful woman who just really knows how to play that type of character.
And that hair, the hair should have gotten its own Oscar. That was such a good, sad, sad movie.
It
So
is, but again, like just that we're reminded of that better film from this trailer, and then our own kind of minds are sort of like orbiting the idea of, hey, we see an opportunity here that this guy missed, and it's not so much like, oh, I wish they were making it that way. It's more like, well, what's like what would you what would you see, knowing the comedy films or lack thereof that have come out over the last decade or so, as an issue that kind of resonates in this trailer? To me, it looks like just missed opportunities. And instead of going for the risky aspect, which is a big part of comedy, it's going for the safer route.
well, there's multiple different kinds of comedies. I mean, there's the ones that are director driven, like the Farley brothers kind of comedies. Then there's the ones that are driven by the actor personality, whether it's Ben Stiller, Farrell, name a bunch of other actors, or you've got the ones that who's the guy who did Home Alone?
Oh,
Who's
Macaulay Culkin and Joe
no,
Pesci and
no, but I'm talking about the director.
John Hughes.
John Hughes. So he was a machine. We just seem to be missing a cohort of people who just live and breathe comedy. And I think the John Hughes, I don't know whether he was working for National Lampoon or or Spy Magazine, but that came from an era where comedy existed everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
You had sketch comedy, Second City, Saturday Night Live. You had National Lampoon magazine. You had Spy Magazine. You had the National Lampoon annuals. You had Monty Python. And so, for a comedy to be released was not a surprise. You go, oh, great, a comedy. And you had National Lampoon Vacation, right?
Yeah.
National Lampoon had a live touring show, which actually featured
a bunch of the Saturday Night Live players before they got Saturday Night Live.
Correct.
Yeah.
So we're missing that. We're missing the cloud of comedy out of which these things are coalescing. I mean, Will Ferrell. I mean, a lot of comedy was encouraged by the producer. My brain's gone. Michael.
Lorne Michaels from
Lorne
Saturday
Michaels.
Night Live. Yep.
Yeah, Lorne Michaels. How many comedies did he produce?
At least a dozen. I mean, starting even with Wayne's World from Mike Myers. And
well,
David
even
Harvey.
Before that, I think The Ruttles was produced by Lorne Michaels.
And of course the Blues Brothers. Can't forget them. And yeah,
so there was an imperative to somehow take his own cast and turn them into movie stars. Ghostbusters.
Yep. Brilliant comedy that has its fun with horror and genre and sci-fi. And yeah, because when we were watching this trailer, it's like, oh, we recognize a number of players in there. We got Ray Liotta, you've got Jason Sudeikis, Jason Bateman, Charlie Day, like all these guys that have come from comedy. And yet, where's the real comedy in this trailer aside from that initial joke?
Sure.
And then compare that to the other trailer we saw, which is actually based off of a story from a stand-up comic, one that tells decent stories, but as a stand-up, I think you and I would both agree that he's something a bit to be desired, and that was The Machine.
Right.
Bert Kreischer, he's got Mark Hamill plays his father.
And he's kind of chewing up the scenery.
Yes, he's definitely chewing up the scenery. And it's based off of a story because Bert Kreischer is actually an inspiration for the Van Wilder movie.
Is he?
Yes, he was a student who went to college for 7 years and was not very good at college. But yeah, he has this story where he went to Russia in the mid-90s and the mafia loved him. And
apparently it's based on a true story, right?
Yes, apparently it is based on a true story, one that I had heard a little bit about only a few years before the pandemic started, because apparently this movie had been in development since then. They've been trying to get it made for many years. And yes, we have this fictional story based off of a real story, like the what if whatever they stole in the 90s, the person who it was supposed to inherit that wants it back. And then you have this kind of road trip to Russia comedy, father son comedy take. And what were your thoughts when you saw that trailer?
I thought it
had
was
some
very
potential.
intriguing.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know how funny it's going to be, but I thought, wow, the segue was eminently believable because of its implausibility. And he became the machine, and that's all he could say was machine, machine. And then he suddenly got embedded in the Russian underworld, and we know the Russian underworld exists.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I now I don't know what the ending of it is. I'm curious. I'm not a fan of his stand-up, but I really liked that trailer.
I like the trailer because it definitely did something that the Fool's Paradise trailer didn't give us, which was it gave us some really interesting depth of character and it conveyed the relationship between father and son, how the father kind of doubted the kid
Yeah,
and wasn't very too proud of him clearly, and how when the main character Bert, once everything gets in over his head, he is really bothered by what's happening now. Like he's clearly someone who has grown up, and he's not like the party guy he was in the 90s that his father probably still associates with him. And now he feels like I am in over my head. What's going on? I don't want to be here.
well, comedy is generally driven by high concept premise, a comedian that you know, or both.
Mm-hmm.
So, Talladega Nights with Will Ferrell was hilarious,
Yes.
and he's making fun of NASCAR, and Ferrell clearly went through, a Rolodex of, okay, what can I make fun of next? Kind of comedy. Oh, figure skating, Blades of Glory. It's clear he just went through every category. What can I make fun of? And Blades of Glory was, I mean, the Korean death spiral. I mean,
and,
it
and
was,
and the brilliance of using the Airbud technique of, well,
oh,
it's not in the rules, so we can get away with it, making fun of that. Like again, yeah, Will Ferrell did a number of sports comedies. He did Talladega Nights, he did figure skating, he did basketball.
right.
Um, I
But
think he did
but
another
but
thing.
comedians have a short lifespan.
Mhm.
Adam Sandler, I don't know if he's doing anything. Well, he's doing stuff for Netflix,
Yes, he
but more
actually just did.
dramatic stuff.
He just did a mystery movie sequel with Jennifer Aniston that came
Number
out.
two.
Yep,
Did
number
you see the
two.
first one?
I did not.
Okay, I'm intrigued by it. But I mean, again, I've realized through the Frantics that had a 10-year, 15-year span, you just can't go back,
Mhm.
and you have to come up with something else and reinvent yourself. Why did we want to watch Buster Keaton movies? Oh, because of Buster Keaton. Why did we want to watch Abbott and Costello? Well, because of Abbott and Costello. We wanted to see performers. The fellow who is in Fool's Paradise.
Yeah, Charlie Day.
I recognize him, but I wouldn't go see a movie with him in it.
Yeah, no, I get that.
Maybe this is his entry, his gateway to becoming, a an Adam Sandler comedy industry. Who knows? But it doesn't look that particularly exciting.
Yeah, because well, Charlie Day has been the sidekick character actor in a few films
Yes.
prior to that. And so this is his attempt to try and break that mold, which I don't begrudge him for doing. I'm like all for it
No.
because you never know. Sometimes, I mean, that was Will Ferrell. He was a side character actor who really knew how to, make an impact in the scenes, and he did so brilliantly in Old School. And then he started getting his own movies, and
Alf. I
yeah,
mean, but these are
Alf was great.
high concept.
Mhm.
You understood the gag right from the beginning. And I put it to you that you need to do that in comedy. Excuse me. Dumb and Dumber.
Well, we actually have a comedy coming up that is high concept and does appear to lean into that gag, and that's Renfield, because
Yes.
Dracula is very high concept,
And
and now
he's
we're
way
getting
over the top.
way over the top, played by Nicolas Cage. So he's going to have a lot of fun with the
Yeah.
role, and we're going to enjoy those moments. And the approach is really just his assistant who's going through what appears to be a midlife crisis of sorts with his between him and his boss. The
Which is a great premise.
yeah,
It's a very modern premise. Yeah. And so he plays it straight. Nicolas Cage chews up the scenery. I think I would watch that. That sounds like fun.
and it also has that kind of fish out of water aspect to it, where his world is so beyond what we
Yeah.
would recognize that when he comes to ours for help, so to speak, it you have the clashing of the two worlds, and that's a great birthing place for comedy.
Yeah. Would you have called Tremors a comedy?
Hmm. That's a tricky one because it does have a lot of little jokes here and there.
Oh yeah, it's funny.
I mean, it's well peppered throughout the whole thing, but it's also very driven by action.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, Kevin Bacon's character has a really great arc
Yep.
in it as well. I love the fact that the father from Family Ties, who plays a hippie on that
Yeah.
show, is a gun-toting nut on in the movie
With Reba
with
McEntire.
Reba
And
McEntire.
they
Yep,
were great.
they were.
So
Yeah,
we're missing the classic young Frankenstein style comedies.
yeah,
So
and
who's making this? I mean, if they
oh,
made Young Frankenstein now,
mhm.
would it work?
I see the thing that I'm concerned of. I don't know if today's audiences would get it.
Okay. The fact that they don't have the historical context, they haven't read it, it isn't part of their zeitgeist.
Well, I mean, I can't remember the last time I've heard the youth actually studying Mary Shelley's Frankenstein in
Hmm.
school. And I think that's probably it because I mean, it's a great work. It's a great book to discuss. I mean, modern day Prometheus is um, very much ahead of its time and is a timeless classic. But I wonder, is that still part of curriculum? And
Well, I
if it
mean,
isn't, how often are people really getting?
but there are things that just seem to be in the air for an awful long time, even if you didn't study it. So I never studied Mary Shelley,
Mhm.
but I saw Abbott and Costello
Meet
meets
Frankenstein?
Frankenstein.
Yep.
Um, so these were tropes that were used over and over again by everybody because Hollywood is not particularly creative. And I think maybe that's the difference is that Gen Z knows nothing, and this isn't a Gen Z complaint, knows nothing about the tropes that we watched you and have used for our own writing and perpetuated. Somehow there's been this wall, and none of those tropes work anymore because there's no historical reference to them. The tropes are dead. We need our
Yes.
tropes to be
And we're not.
uncreative idiots.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, there was the attempt with Universal to try and reinvent the monster universe with the Mummy and Tom Cruise,
Yeah, but who cares?
but it didn't work, and who cared?
Yeah.
And how many Frankenstein movies have we really had on the scale that's considered like marketable by the big studios, pushed by the big studios to get into the zeitgeist currently? And I can't think of any other than maybe one with Aaron Eckhart, and I think that's like a 20-year-old film. Um, but like I would say, maybe the concept of Frankenstein is still permeated so far.
Yeah.
But
So there's a
any of
trope
the
that people kind of still kind of sort of know
kind of sort of know,
that's
yeah.
in there, out there in the air. Yeah. But again, it's the more fantasy oriented vampire stuff is more of an interest. Seems
Yeah,
to.
and the other part too is I think we've had way more fantasy vampire stories in recent years focused on just original vampires or variations of than an actual Dracula story. And I think
Correct, because
Renfield might
Dracula's old school.
Dracula's old school, and I think Renfield could probably has a chance of maybe giving a little bit of an extra bit of a heartbeat or a stronger heartbeat,
Or it fails because of that.
or yeah, or it fails because of that.
This is a very interesting discussion. Wow. How did
Well,
this happen?
that's a good question for,
So
but
so the thing is Renfield could be what I classify as vaudeville.
mhm,
I remember one of the people who we worked with, uh, Don Cullen, that was a inspiration for the movie we wrote together. He was always talking about bringing vaudeville back, and
yeah,
we were always telling him no. So I always have that burned into my brain whenever I think of, oh, well, we should be doing this. And then, okay, some Gen Zer is going to look at me and say the equivalent of, oh, you're just trying to bring vaudeville back, even though they know nothing about what vaudeville is. But I don't know what the equivalent is now.
Yeah. uh,
So yeah, so I mean, I don't want to, one of my things that motivates me is I don't want to embarrass myself.
even though that's one of the aspects of being a good comic.
True.
Yeah.
But there's different kinds of embarrassment.
Yeah, one that's intentional and one that's not.
Yeah, that's right. I only want to intentionally embarrass myself.
Well, here's funny that you say the intentional embarrassment. Asteroid City is a Wes Anderson film that very much intentionally trying to make those characters intentionally embarrass themselves.
Okay,
For the
let's
sake
talk
of
about
comedy.
that. So I'll put it to you
Mhm.
that Renfield has a problem because it is trying to resurrect. That was a accidental choice of words. Vampire Dracula.
Yes.
I think Dracula's time maybe has passed.
Yeah, I mean, there are a number of Dracula movies that in the early 2000s I recall that did not make the waves.
Including the Leslie Nielsen ones.
Yes, that was the Mel Brooks and Leslie Nielsen Dracula Dead and Loving It.
Love at First Bite.
Uh Love
No,
at First Bite was that remember, this is not the first Nick Cage vampire film he's been in.
yes, correct.
He was in another vampire film.
Face Off. I don't know. It doesn't matter.
Stuff. Someone in the comments will definitely remember it.
Yeah, yeah.
Escaped me at the moment. But yeah, I think Renfield, I'd say of the comedies coming out this year is one to look closely at because it might be a good barometer for where that type of
Okay.
it's a genre parody essentially.
Yep.
And we don't get many genre parodies. The last bulk of parodies we got were sadly from some very questionable people like Date Movie, Epic Movie, and so forth. Those terrible little byproducts of trash essentially. I can't really.
Yeah. The Vampire Hunters or Vampire Killers, which is the one that was done by that had Sharon Tate in it.
Oh, gosh,
Vampire.
the Fearless Vampire Killers.
That's it. So that was a hilarious film, but slow moving by today's standards.
Yes.
If you watch it now, you just gotta pick up the pace. But very clever, well written, very funny movie.
Yeah, and that's
that could be redone.
60s. So that was also around parallel the time of the Hammer vampire films with Christopher Lee and so yeah, that's something.
But there, see, now you're talking about nothing happen. You're confirming my notion of nothing happens in a vacuum. If yes, you had the Christopher Lee stuff, and what was all that sitcom that was about a vampire, Barabbas, Barabbas, or whatever the guy's. It was a British soap opera.
Oh gosh,
you know which one I'm talking about.
I vaguely do recall it because it's not a lot. Some people in the chat are probably thinking Buffy the Vampire Slayer. No, this is way before that. Because there's a couple of
Dark Shadows.
Dark Shadows, yes.
So all this stuff was existing, so it was fine to just keep creating not spin-offs, but thematic variations. So that's why a movie like Renfield, I am afraid, isn't going to work because we're not doing enough of those kinds of things. So this is a theory of mine that when lots of stuff is happening around a certain thematic, like Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Like,
Mhm.
you know, we've got how many walk
We had Buffy the
Walking
Vampire
Dead,
Slayer, and then that segued into Blade, which also segued into Vampire Diaries.
right?
Um, and
Walking Dead.
and then that paralleled with Walking Dead. Yeah, so we've got
So
so
we've
yeah,
got a
like
floating cloud of this idea. So if someone else proposes something that, you know, that's a variation, somehow that will fit and might be more acceptable. There was also my friend Tim Burns was doing a, a teen, a young teen. Was that a YA? What's that called?
young adult
Young
novel.
adult vampire show
Mhm.
that was hugely successful.
Yeah, I remember also in the 80s there was a vampire sitcom with a vampire family and like a human friend that would visit. And the kids were vampires, but they were also several hundred years old. And
So yeah,
yeah,
uh,
I just can't
yeah,
remember
you
the
could
name.
probably do that again. But a thing about Dracula. So I'm just putting that out there that it's
Sure.
Wednesday has probably come the closest to succeed within a genre, but then that's kind of werewolf fantasy. We kind of that's part of the same kind of cloud of fantasy stuff that's going on right now.
Oh, and there
It's
was also Twilight that the same
Twilight.
that kind of built it up as
Yep.
well.
Yep.
So, I mean, there's a possibility that Renfield is something that does not succeed well, or there's also the very slim possibility it might be the new Trailblazer for it to create a snowball effect for others to kind of jump in
Well,
on.
that would be nice. Now, over to Wes Anderson, Asteroid City. Well, Wes Anderson has always been an oasis.
Mhm.
I mean, no one jumped on the Hotel Budapest bandwagon and created, you know, Hotel Krakow and Hotel, um, Krakow, former, what's the capital of New Delhi, Czechoslovakia? What's the capital of Czechoslovakia?
I can't remember. The Czech Republic has changed so many
Yeah,
times.
no, that's sorry. I shouldn't say Czechoslovakia. Oh my God, I get slapped all the time. I grew up under the notion of Czechoslovakia with my communist era parents. So yes, the Czech Republic and Slovakia. I apologize right now. Please don't come after us.
So it'd be Prague, right? Yeah.
Prague, that's it. There you go.
Yes, Hotel
That
Prague.
Hotel Prague. Anyway, so boy, that took a long time to get to that joke. My failing memory. So yeah. What did you think of the trailer, Wes Anderson's trailer?
I like Wes Anderson's style of comedy because there's something honest and dry about it at the same time, and he also does a good job playing with the actual frame of his
Yes.
shots. Um, I remember actually specifically in I think Hotel Budapest it was where um they accuse Ralph Fiennes, is it? I think it is, or Ray
Finesse, yeah, yeah.
Fiennes.
Ray Fiennes, yeah,
And
yeah.
he's like they don't even make an accusation, but he assumes they do, and then it's just this one flat, the standard, like they lock the camera off, and it's the full shot, and it's just him who runs for the stairs and then
Yeah.
runs up, and it's like,
And there's a beat, and then it's it was
yeah, and
great.
it's just running away, and it's like a Buster Keaton beat,
Yeah.
and it's I really liked it because other comics have used this before. Conan O'Brien on his pilot
Yes.
did this with Adam West, where Adam West is like he's trying to get into this studio lot, and they said no. He's like, well, there's one thing I know, it's to how to take rejection, and you wait a beat, and then just runs into it. He tries to climb the fence, and they just pull him down.
Yeah.
Like
I
we don't
love
get
that. I love that kind of stuff. And to see an actor of that quality do such a
Goofy
goofy
Doo.
run.
Yeah,
Oh, one comedian who didn't even talk about. Maybe he's persona non grata is Woody Allen. Like
oh
Woody
yeah,
Allen was an industry all unto himself. I mean, we would talk about his movies.
we would. He started leaning more into dramas.
Oh yeah, no, because
Yeah,
he got tired of he got tired of doing juxtaposition jokes, which he says he can do very very easily. Uh, well, I brought up Woody Allen because Wes Anderson kind of reminds me of Woody Allen, the locked off camera.
yep.
I love the Woody Allen's shooting will have multiple rooms and people will walk towards the camera into another room, and then through the two rooms talk to each other. Two people will then chat over here, move into another room. And that, I think that was in Hannah and his sisters and her
Yes.
sisters. And to me, I remember the directing of comedy.
Mhm.
And when, so that's why I thought of Woody Allen when we mentioned Wes Anderson, and having comedy, having the framing comedic, which
Yes, that's something I noticed in when I was rewatching The Coconuts with the Marx Brothers. They
with the
actually
Marx Brothers. Okay.
they have this framing between two hotel rooms that share a door, and it's perfectly timed gags of them going in between all the rooms in
Oh
a
yeah.
very funny set piece. And it's like, oh, I remember that technique. It takes a lot of work. It's also very impressive when you pull it off. But today, if that were to be done, there'd be lots of quick cuts, and
Oh,
you wouldn't really get the sense of space and the joke. And going back again to Wes Anderson, is like he likes to really use the setting to further the comedy that he's doing, but he doesn't let it overshadow what's actually happening on the screen. It's
well,
almost like a complementary relationship he's trying to establish.
and that was a Fool's Paradise. I saw no camera angle that I thought was intriguing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, uh, uh, what's wrong with Gilbert Grape was
Or what's eating
filled.
Gilbert Grape? Yeah,
Pardon, what did I say?
what's eating Gilbert Grape?
What's eating Gilbert Grape? Uh, um, was just filled with interesting camera angles and
Mm-hmm.
interesting locations and stuff. And I think you can recognize comedy through that, the power of the lens and the framing. The one with John Malkovich,
Being John
being
Malkovich.
John Malkovich,
Mm-hmm.
filled with comedic framing. And I just didn't get that from Fool's Paradise. And to me, and maybe that's a language that has been lost.
Well, that's a good question to consider for the future. Is like how much has how much has cinematography lost its hold on understanding or at least conveying comedy? And I don't blame the cinematographers for it at all. I think they probably could do it. It's just the creative force behind it saying, hey, it's not just the actors we also have, how we shoot the actors, and what angles we can have fun with, and what
Right.
camera movements we can do. It just reminds me of kind of like the Zuckers, with in a movie like Top Secret. They have a framing, they have a locked off camera,
Right.
and the background is a long table with soldiers conveying, saying, strategizing to take some top secret documents, and in the front of and the foreground of frame is a telephone. And we just think it's a close up of the telephone, but when the guy walks up and picks it up, the phone is this giant thing.
Yeah.
and it's and it's your magic trick, because comedy does share a lot with magic. There's setups and
True.
surprises, and and where is
Look at
that?
Police Squad, where the 7 foot guy, you never saw his head.
You never saw his head, yeah. But weird things would happen, like you'd say you have something in your teeth, and he
Yes.
picks out literally a giant chunk of banana.
Or a cat or something.
Or yeah.
So and that, to me, we're missing that. We're missing the playfulness of it's not just what's on the screen, but what's around it and the framing, and you could recognize a comedy that way. I mean, obviously back in the silent era, and you saw a Buster Keaton, there's a piece about a elevator,
Mm-hmm.
and obviously he wants to date the daughter of a entrepreneur who doesn't want anything to do with them, and then they're chasing up and down the stairs that are around the elevator and going up and down the elevator, and it's just locked off.
Yep.
And then he goes through the transom at the top of uh the door, and then flips around back through. And
Yeah.
you're seeing skill, you're seeing
And creativity, like just really
creativity.
pushing it. I mean, I remember hearing the story where Buster Keaton makes a jump off of a building, and he's supposed to make the jump, but he slips and falls. So he's like, "Well, screw it. Let's just do what happened where I fall and I catch like the flag post or something."
Right.
And it's like, oh, that's taking what would others would say as a ruin to take, and be like, no, no, let's work with that. Let's see where that takes
Yeah,
us.
I'm not going to do that.
Yeah, no, I don't think you want to hear that.
He wrecked himself many times. So So I'm not seeing that in Fool's Paradise. Wes Anderson, what I mentioned in a kind of a mini review of the trailer that the problem with Wes Anderson's movies is that they all look like Wes Anderson's movies, but the thing that's good about Wes Anderson movies is that they all look like Wes Anderson movies.
Yes.
And it's like seeing 100 still lifes from an artist, and you go, well, there's 100 still lifes, but these 5 are brilliant. But he needed to paint 100 of them
to get
the 5 absolutely world-class, brilliant still lifes. So is this going to be? I loved Hotel Budapest.
Yeah.
So I had no problem with that. Other people didn't like it, but does he make money for anybody?
Nah, that's questionable, but he definitely does something where he's allowed to keep making movies.
Yeah. So Hotel Budapest box office. Let's just look it up. I have the internet right here. Okay. Oh, it made $173 million.
That's pretty good considering the fact that he also makes movies very, very
yeah. and the cast that he gets for his movies, and especially this one. And I bet you they work for near scale for him.
I would imagine so. Because I mean, again, he casts those talented actors to play characters that are very much outside of their normal type.
Yes.
So I think that's exactly what they want. I mean, that's what I kind of enjoyed when I saw The Life Aquatic.
Yeah, I enjoyed that.
I enjoyed that one too because it plays on funny aspects, and it's also like, you know, a supposed father-son type of story. Willem Dafoe plays a role you've never seen him play before in that one, and
very funny guy.
but yeah, so I mean, it looks, I mean, he's got a consistency. He has a brand that he sticks to.
Yeah,
and it works for him, and he definitely has a following, and he's got quite a good reputation as a result of that. And what I enjoyed about Asteroid City is that it's another movie that takes something familiar and has fun with it. Like,
yeah,
we're familiar with
Area 51 or whatever.
With Area 51, we're familiar with having to take long train rides with regards to, say, the Darjeeling Limited. We're familiar with Hotel Budapest or hotel crime stories of that nature. We're familiar with Rushmore, which is like your high school coming of age story that he's kind of eschewing. And the Royal Tenenbaums, we're familiar with, you know, children and father relationships and what that means into a very privileged type family and so forth. So he has fun with those concepts, and I think that's why, you know, I'm leaning more towards the interest in Renfield, Asteroid City, and to a point the Machine, because these have something a bit more intimate with them in the themes. You've got more intimate relationships with these stories, where Fool's Paradise is just a fool who's being kind of led through Hollywood. With the Machine, it's a father-son story. With Renfield,
and it's got an angle. It's got the Russian angle. I'm really a big fan of Cold War stories. I just finished off Cleo on Netflix. Wow. And that's got a cliffhanger. Bugger. He did not get the red case. Oop, sorry.
Spoiler. I'll bleep that out.
Oh, this is a great scene where this Russian, the woman all along has been, this one woman all along has been a Soviet KGB spy, and she's ready to kill him, but she's pregnant and her water breaks at the very moment. I went, wow, that's really clever.
That is absolutely brilliant.
And then the good guys get away because
she's going into labor.
Yeah, it was, wow. I mean,
that's literally a laborious escape.
This is why I refuse to work with you anymore. No. You're a wonderful, charming person with your own teeth, and those are my sole standards. I don't have, you just, if you have your own teeth, I'll work with you. My standards are very low.
That's wonderful. I greatly appreciate that.
So we should wrap things up. I mean, I look forward to the Wes Anderson movie. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure Hotel Budapest was made for 10 mil or something like ridiculous like that, and it made 173 mil. That's a good return. Script Doctor, thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, for taking the time to have this awesome chat with me about comedy and the upcoming movies that we're seeing here. Um, look forward to doing this again in
Yeah.
the future when time is available.
Yeah. Well, the next time we'll do our little Star Trek thingy with Robert Burnett, right?
Yeah, yes, we will. All right.
Myers, Robert Burnett Myers. And he's a hyphenated name guy.
Yes, he is.
Okay.